Modified. Yes, sir.
Hi, Kevin Skipper. I'd like to see if we could maybe move item 130679 up to beneath item number 3 to make it item number 4.
130679. What's that?
Regulation of nicotine dispensing devices.
E-cigarettes. Well, this is dealing with a. Is this a resolution or ordinance? So we take these actions in the evening.
We're required to.
We're required. Yeah.
We drove up from the Tampa Bay area to represent and speak on this, and we didn't realize it would be 9 or 10 o'clock tonight before.
It will not be 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. We have a rather light agenda, and I really anticipate us to get to this by about 8 o'clock at the latest. I know that may be too much anyway, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor, if they're just coming to make a couple comments, I'd be okay with listening to their comments.
The other thing we could do
we're not going to move the item, but we can certainly hear their comments.
Yeah, we need to have it in the evening, but our evening sort of begins around 5:30 with some proclamations, resolutions, citizen comment period. You can make some comments now. You could make some comments then, or you can wait till around 8 o'clock or so. We have some really outstanding restaurants in the downtown area we'd welcome you to come and spend lots of money at. And
we're all Gator fans here, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll help or not. But anyway, appreciate it. We figured we would ask at this point to see if we could get it moved up.
We don't want you to leave without making a comment. So if you feel that...
we didn't drive here not to, but
right.
It's just a matter of timing.
Understood. Okay. And sorry we didn't communicate where these things fall on the agenda more effectively. All right, Mr. Clerk, last item.
The final ordinance, 130679, regulation of nicotine dispensing devices. In Orange City, Gainesville, Florida, amending the city code of ordinances relating to smoking and the use of nicotine dispensing devices by repealing the provisions of Chapter 11.5 that are preempted by state law and adopting new provisions of Chapter 11.5 to regulate the use of nicotine dispensing devices, amending the definition of smoke or smoking in Section 11.5-40, adding a penalty provision to Section 2-339, providing directions to codifier, providing a severability clause, providing a repealing clause, and providing an immediate effective date.
Okay. Do we have any staff, if not presentation, a synopsis? I know we've seen this before. Mr. Manager, Mr. Folkers?
Paul Folkers, Assistant City Manager. Yes, this was vetted through the Public Safety Committee, came back to the City Commission. City Commission gave direction to the City Attorney, so coming back on second reading now. The basics of this is that action was taken by the state legislature, and that really addressed some of the issues of concern to the committee and the commission relative to access of e-cigarettes by minors. And so really the draft ordinance before you focuses on and would prohibit use of e-cigarettes in areas where smoking is currently prohibited in the city. And so that's really the gist of the ordinance that's before you.
Okay, thank you. Any commissioners have questions on any of this? Seeing none, we will entertain a motion. We will. We put a motion on the floor and then we open up for comment. Yes, sir. Did we get a motion yet?
I'd like to make the motion, since it came from Public Safety, that the City Commission adopt the proposed ordinance as provided.
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt the ordinance as provided. Now we will open this up to public comment. If you wish to speak to this item, we ask that you provide your name for the record, and then the floor is yours. Okay, thank you. Other members of the public who wish to speak to this?
I have a handout for you. Do I pass it out to each one of you individually? Is that okay?
Yes, please provide to the clerk, and he will provide copies to us.
It's like a final report for class. It's a good one.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Commission members. My name is Kevin Skipper. I'm from Wesley Chapel, Florida, and I'm speaking in opposition to Agenda Item 130679, Regulation of Nicotine Dispensing Devices. I've given you a handout there. It's got a letter that I sent to each of the commissioners and mayor, and also it was printed as a guest column in the Gainesville Sun this past week. And also in the packet, I've indicated some electronic cigarette studies on passive vaping as it's known. So you can look through the different tabs and see I've highlighted the relevant conclusions for you. You can spend some time hopefully after this and review them. Again, my name is Kevin Skipper. I'm the president of VISTA, which is an industry alliance that was formed in Florida. It's a nonprofit, and our goal is to have a lobbyist in every state capital by next year. I also co-own a vape shop in Tampa, Florida, and I'm the owner of Vaping Convention Circuit. It's a convention organization company that has a goal of introducing tobacco users to electronic cigarettes. Vaping offered me the only viable alternative to a 15-year, 1.5 pack per day combustible cigarette habit. Approximately 1,100 Americans die every day from a tobacco-related illness. That means that during your meeting today, the session that you guys have had, approximately 400 Americans will have died from a tobacco-related illness. Elected officials have a duty to their constituents to make informed decisions about laws that they are passing. If it looks like a cigarette, it should be treated like one does not make for sound policy. Scientific evidence clearly indicates that passive vapor, i.e. vapor emitted by the use of e-cigs, is not harmful to bystanders. And that's evidenced in 3 of several studies that I've provided to you today. I am respectfully asking that you all break that mentality and be the leaders in the state of Florida. Reject the notion that because another governing body enacted a law, you must follow suit. Electronic cigarettes are not tobacco products. Where there is vapor, there is not smoke. If you are not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, and a vote for this ordinance is a vote for big tobacco by discouraging people to try e-cigs as a viable alternative. A vote for this ordinance will reinforce the notion that electronic cigarettes are tobacco products, which clearly they are not. They contain no tobacco, there is no combustion process, and there is no smoke emitted from them. I respectfully encourage each of you to vote no on this proposed ordinance, or at the very least table discussion on the matter until such time as a workshop can be scheduled and conducted to provide further education on the topic before you today. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank
you. If you
you.
have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Okay, well, we're still taking public comment, so if other members of the public wish to speak to this item, you can come forward. And then we'll probably get some response because I saw at least one light go off.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Terryl Bowen, and I'm also from Tampa, Florida. We drove up here this morning to talk to you all in regards to Ordinance 130679. So thank you for hearing my comments regarding regulation of nicotine dispensing devices. I'll first say that I sit also on the board of directors of VISTA Truth, Vaping Industry Strategic Alliance. As vice president, it's a nonprofit Florida organization that's also focused, as Kevin said, on advocating for businesses or the truth about electronic cigarettes. I think there's a lot of misconception in the industry with people not knowing what electronic cigarettes are all about. I also own an electronic cigarette company that manufactures e-liquids, and I employ over 25 employees out of Tampa. We contribute heavily to the local and state economy through employment and a considerable amount of sales tax. I feel that the proposed ordinance to lump electronic cigarettes alongside of traditional tobacco cigarettes is a step in the wrong direction in the initiative to provide people with a safer alternative to smoking. While I agree that Florida's Senate Bill 224 was a positive to prohibit minors from possessing nicotine dispensing devices, I do not feel that imposing stricter regulations is a benefit for public health. There are many studies that we've included in those packets that you guys see there that I respectfully implore you to look at, read, and understand. It shows scientific proof that vapor emitted from electronic cigarettes possesses no measurable risk to bystanders. And I think that this ordinance is focused on protecting public health from people getting secondhand vapor. So I implore you all to please review these studies respectfully before making a well-informed decision on this ordinance. Let me last say that I would like to conclude by saying again the proposed ban is solely based on a perception that vapor is smoke, and that the proposals to ban e-cigarettes where smoking is prohibited is solely based on a concern and not fact that there's a potential risk to bystanders. These studies we are providing you will show that. So if you guys vote yes, I believe it's a vote for big tobacco.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Eric Livers, and I'm from Interlochen. Gainesville is pretty close to me. I've been vaping since 2009. It honestly has been the best innovation since the internet, maybe even better. It's saving people's lives. I am an advocate for vaping. I am a juice maker. After this meeting, if y'all would like to see what goes in it, I can make a bottle of juice right in front of you. PG, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, and flavoring. And that's all it is.
I assume when you say juice, you're not talking about something
I'm talking about e-liquid.
Yeah.
I apologize for the slang.
Because folks listening might misunderstand your assertion there.
I understand. I am an e-liquid maker as well.
All right, go ahead. You have the floor.
It's been scientifically proven that propylene glycol, it's been allowed to be put into the ventilation systems of hospitals. It's approved for that. And those hospitals that have emitted propylene glycol into their ventilation systems have seen a 65% reduction in respiratory infections. So essentially when we're vaping, we're sanitizing the air. I just think it's an uneducated motion to ban a product that there has been no education given to. But again, we come before you to ask that you hold off on making a quick decision like this, and we'd be more than happy to educate you on exactly what e-liquid and electronic cigarettes are. We're saving people's lives, and this industry alone has taken more people off of tobacco than any pill, lozenge, or nonprofit organization has ever done. So I apologize for I'm a little nervous standing before y'all, but I feel very passionate about this, and I've seen it change a lot of people's lives. So thank you very much for taking the time to hear me out.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for coming up to Gainesville. Other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, we do have some lights. We'll start with Commissioner Carter.
Yeah, I just want to start off also by saying thank you for coming up and participating in this. And please understand my comments as sincere as I can make them. My concern is, and you just said you're a juicer, and I'm from the 70s. There was juicers back then too. We did a little different things. But I don't know what's going into those vapors, to be honest with you. And I'm sure you are all men of integrity, but I really don't know what's going in there. And I have been standing in line at a restaurant waiting and been vaped on, and I didn't really appreciate it, to be honest with you. But if I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of caution, because I'm sure that if we had public records that asbestos was okay, and tobacco at some time was okay probably also. So if it's my decision, and I'm going to support this, I'm going to err on the side of the public safety. As a former smoker of 3 packs a day, I wish I would have had what you guys are doing, and I do appreciate your industry. And I applaud you for that, because if it gets one person off cigarettes, you guys are my heroes. But I am going to support this ordinance because the great unknown, I can't vote for. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Commissioner Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a couple of comments and maybe a question. I think I do appreciate also that you've made the effort to be here, and I read your material. In fact, I believe you've sent us essentially the same material electronically, if I'm not mistaken. The letter I certainly read before. I don't know that we had the medical reports behind here, but I just want to at least characterize what I think is behind the motion tonight. And I think it's a little different than you characterize it. And I think, to be fair to you, I want you to know that advocacy, I pay very close attention to the language you use. And it would be a very erroneous conclusion to say that anybody's decision up here is based on responding to the tobacco industry or big pharma. Frankly, I've heard nothing from those industries. what I have heard a great deal from is the public health officials in our community and advocates in our community who are concerned about the availability of this product to new customers, i.e. youngsters. And the issue has not ever been, I don't believe, about banning your product, but simply not having it be utilized at a place and time where others don't wish to be exposed to it, and particularly where the message is being sent that it's being encouraged as a desirable item for somebody who doesn't currently use your product. My grandfather suffered horribly from emphysema from smoking cigarettes, smoked cigarettes, and only stopped that a couple of years before his death. I wish to God that he had never picked up a cigarette. And I honestly wish, knowing how hard it was to get away from nicotine, that he had an alternative at that time in the 1980s of a product that could have gotten him away from the most harmful elements. But what I'm most concerned about when I talk about public use of this product is its presentation and availability to those who don't wish to be exposed to it and those who, particularly youngsters, who frankly are your future customers. You know, inadvertently or not, ethical or not, everybody's about selling and getting their product into the new hands, not just the person going out. And so again, this is not about banning your product. It's about not having it being foisted upon those in public settings who don't wish to have it foisted upon them, just like cigarettes, and in particular not to be presented in a way that's desirable to those who currently don't use it. That's for me what it's about. If, as advocates, you want to have impact on showing to public officials like us the desirable benefits of your product, I think you should work with the public health officials in this county, in this state, in this nation, and demonstrate the fact that it does not serve as an entree to cigarettes for kids who might want to use them later on in life. Coming and telling us that it's because we're being influenced by the tobacco industry, I just don't think that's an effective advocacy method. And I know that you didn't mean that in an insulting way, but honestly, that is one of the messages here. And I think the idea that we're talking about banning the product, we're not talking about banning the product. We're simply saying do not use it in a setting where someone doesn't wish to be exposed to it, usually in a confined space that is otherwise restricted for smoking. So, you know, that's kind of the gist of where I'm coming from, and I do appreciate your coming up. And to the extent that this product is an alternative for somebody who is otherwise addicted to cigarettes, that seems like a reasonable alternative. I don't know either about the chemical composition, but I'm well aware of the severity of smoking cigarettes, and so, you know, I do appreciate that as a possible preferred alternative. But that's really not about what our ordinance is here tonight. In my estimation, it's about not having it put upon somebody who doesn't want exposure to it, and particularly not being presented as a good alternative that might lead one into an interest in cigarettes later on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, addiction to nicotine, one way or the other, you're going to get that addiction filled, and you know, I'm concerned that essentially becomes an addiction to nicotine later on to cigarettes. And that's where I would hope you would work with public health officials to suss out, is that a true fact or not? Because none of what you've provided us tonight addresses that. You simply compare, if you have the vapor compared to the smoke, is one better than the other? And I don't have any reason to doubt that that's probably better. I frankly don't want to be exposed to either. I think that's what citizens have asked us to vote on tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Wells. Commissioner Chase.
I just wanted to quickly lay out, I probably replaying in my head what I said at 1 o'clock. I was innocently trying to save you an afternoon, but I'm glad you spent some money in our town, I guess, and how that works. But and the reason is because I heard one of the comments, just so you understand, and what I would suggest maybe, as you do go across the state, to understand the process. And so you are at the last meeting of many hours of discussion over this. And so the way our city government works is that we had a referral to a committee, and then the committee vetted it, I believe, in 2 meetings. But we had very lengthy and very detailed discussions about it, and including from a legal aspect of looking at what the state law was, and then certainly advocacy groups for the ordinance. and I can't recall, I don't think we had any advocacy. We had a couple vendors and all, but what I would suggest is that really if you can find the different cities that might be having this discussion, to offer the counter opinions at that point, because so what happened was we had that meeting at a committee. The committee referred it to the commission, this group. This group talked about it and voted on it to become an ordinance. The ordinance was then written. The ordinance was then reviewed and discussed again in a meeting and voted on. And then now tonight we're at the second reading, which so to have some blowhard up here say, hey, thanks for coming, but we're not going to change our vote, or I'm not going to change my vote, is I want to apologize for that, first of all, because it probably didn't come out right. But that's where we are in our process. And so that's what I guess I was trying to tell you. We did, I think we did look at it from the science. I can tell you that the science is certainly debatable, but, and a lot of issues. And we face a lot of issues with science. But what I found usually is, depending on which side of an issue on, your science is right. Not yours, but just generically speaking. So I appreciate the comments you guys made. It looks like, it's probably hard to find anybody generally our age that hasn't been personally affected by smoking. So I would agree also with what Commissioner Wells said. I don't view this as a vote for big tobacco either, but it sounds cool. Probably looks good on a T-shirt. But certainly, when I look at my mother's ashes every night in my house, I'm not going to think that this is about big tobacco. When I think about my mother-in-law, who I just lost this summer to lung disease, not about tobacco. When I personally think about chewing 2 cans of Copenhagen a day for 10 years, not about big tobacco. So if you get in the local processes earlier, and if you probably not look at elected officials and tell them it's a vote for big tobacco, maybe be a little more effective. But I do think that the science will continue to evolve, and I agree with the comment that somebody made, one of your guys made, where it's like, don't just do something because another body's made a law, and I agree with that in general. I think if the science does come out, some things like with workplaces and things may come out. And I personally was okay at the committee level in the workplace, for instance, because I work at a young technology company. We got a few people that do it. It ultimately doesn't bother the people of the company, but again, the public side of it is what we're doing. So again, apologize for the 1 o'clock comment. Thank you for staying and certainly advocating your positions, and go Gators.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Mayor, and Commissioner Chase clarified a lot of the comments that I wanted to make regarding the process that we have gone through, but then also to point out that this ordinance in particular, what it's doing is bringing us in line with what Alachua County ordinance already has related to this, and identifies items that are now covered by the state ordinances or statutes that weren't covered before, that we had in city ordinance, that we can remove from our city ordinance because it's preempted by what the state policy is. And again, the consideration as far as the benefits of this, we're not saying you can't use it. I don't think you guys would argue, and I think I heard you saying so, that it should be prohibited to aged minors and things like that. So I've seen people using this and swearing by it, the benefits that they do it. And my mother, too, was a heavy smoker. If she could have had something like this, she could have been around another 10 years. But we're not telling people that they can't do it other than minors, and you can't dispense it to minors. And I wish you continued success and enjoyment with your vaping. It's kind of opening up a whole new conversation and languages that we'll get used to, maybe. Vape on, man.
Well, I have an opportunity to.
Go ahead. Yes, I'll.
Just a couple of clarifications. The children selling to minors was taken care of by the state. Senate Bill 224 did pass. So the comment about a vote for this is a vote for big tobacco was not a direct shot at you. However, I want you to understand that de facto that's what you're doing, because you're lumping in electronic cigarettes with tobacco cigarettes. And by doing that, you're setting a precedent for other cities and counties around the state to look and say, look at what Gainesville did. They've classified it as a tobacco product, which it is clearly not. So I guess I don't have so much of a problem with an ordinance, but the ordinance needs to be so that it doesn't set precedent indicating that these are tobacco products, because they are not tobacco products. And the science that you have there, I understand what you're saying. Statistics can be used to support any position you want them to support. You can find anything to support it. However, this science is pretty concrete about the exhaled vapor from an electronic cigarette. You may have been offended, Commissioner Carter. I'm sorry about that someone vaped on you or blew their vapor in your direction. But you probably noticed that at the time that it happened to you, that it did not stink like a cigarette. It did not stick to your clothes. I mean, it may have been rude of them to actually do that. Yeah, it actually does. But the exhaled vapor is innocuous to bystanders, and that's essentially what I'm trying to get across to you tonight, that you're passing an ordinance that's going to cripple a product and tie it in with why will it cripple a product? Because you're saying that it is a tobacco product. And that is not the perception we want to put out across the state of Florida and across the country. We want people to be curious about the product and try the product and get off of tobacco cigarettes so that it will save their lives, hopefully, at some point. And by passing this ordinance, you're creating a precedent for other cities and counties to use Gainesville as the beacon, and that's just something that we want to avoid. And I know that we're in the 11th hour here of your process in Gainesville, but we just found out about it about a week ago. And the process, just because you're in the 11th hour, is not over. You still have the opportunity tonight to make a decision to table this discussion and let us come back and present to you some facts, because it doesn't sound like you've had all of them. And so that's something that we want to do. I'm not asking you to kill this. If we have a workshop in a month from now and we're able to present to you some information about this, what's the harm? If we save lives, what's the harm? There's no harm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have some more lights. Commissioner Wells first, and then Commissioner
do you have any data that shows how you, as you say, you have an interest in a perception of your product to make people curious to use it?
Correct.
And yet the implication throughout your conversation is as an alternative to tobacco.
Correct.
And so I just would ask, you've provided data that says smoke versus vapor.
Correct.
You've provided nothing that talks about how many of your customers are people that have never used cigarettes before.
Very few.
And how many of them then are, so you're asserting at this point that your product is all about marketing to existing smokers.
Absolutely. And what you were saying earlier was, so right now in America, we've converted probably 2 to 3 million smokers and tobacco users, not just smokers, people that use Copenhagen. I've converted a 2-can a day Copenhagen user to vaping, and he feels much better for it.
I respect
There's
that.
another 46 million smokers in America.
I respectfully assert that a product that claims to be only for existing users and then asserts that they're very concerned about being bound up with tobacco is a contradictory message. And
absolutely not, because we're not tobacco.
You're going to sell your product. It's a legal product.
Mr. Wells has the floor, so he can conclude his comments.
And I appreciate. I really do. I mean, I appreciate your approach, but I just think I gave you the suggestion. I think you've got to focus on, if you want to make this case to folks that like us, I think you've got to focus on how many of your users are otherwise going to go on to use cigarettes that may not have otherwise used it. And without that kind of data, not just side by side to take at faith that somebody is already addicted to tobacco using your product, because nobody's banning your product. They're simply saying in a situation where you can't smoke, you can't vape, out of respect for everyone else who doesn't want to have that. And if we were going farther, if we were saying you can't use your product in places where you can smoke, then I think your argument would be dead on. But in the situation of equal treatment, where the product is available to adults in other situations, I think honestly it just doesn't wash for me. And I'm not saying it can't in the future, but I think you've got to go to objective public health sources and work with them to review objectively outside of the financial interest of trying to sell the product, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that there's any unethical about that. I just think if you wanted to have it be read, it's got to be read in the context of objective public health comparisons, not in the context of advocacy for sale of a product. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Poe.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but you came a long way, and I feel like I owe you an explanation for my vote, so I'll give it to you. I think you would have an argument if we were banning the use in city limits outright. But we're not even coming close to that. And so the purpose for me is that we do not want this product to be used in public environments where there may be underage people that do not know the difference between a cigarette and a vape device. My 3-year-old daughter, if she's playing on the playground, is not going to understand the difference between somebody that's smoking and somebody that's using a vape device. I would venture to guess most of the parents there would not know the difference. Now, that's a challenge. That's a market challenge for you guys. I mean, that's something that you are going to have to do a lot of customer education on if this industry is going to expand. And I see a lot of education happening on television and magazines. I mean, the industry is spending a lot of money on trying to re-educate our population and separate itself from tobacco products. For us here in Gainesville, and our job is to sort of reflect the will of our citizens. If we were to allow this in restaurants, on playgrounds, and other public spaces, we would hear about it immediately. People would be very upset by that. And I don't believe, would have a lot of ground to stand on, because we would be allowing the use of an addictive substance in those settings. It's not a tobacco product. It's not a cigarette, but it is an addictive substance, and it is it could potentially be used, save this ordinance, in an environment where people expect to not be around that. And so that is why I believe this is prudent public policy right now. Now, that doesn't mean at some point in the future, 5 years down the road, where the entire environment changes and the public believes that this is a positive health benefit, that we don't revisit this. But I think the prudent step right now is to protect not only the public safety, but also the public's expectation of not being exposed to addictive substances and their use when people don't really know that one is a tobacco product and the other is not. And so this again, I think, is the prudent public policy move at this point. And you've got a mountain ahead of you. And I mean, there are some products that just require a tremendous amount of capital to be invested in public education for a product to come about. And I think that that's the path you're on. I'm sure that's why you're here tonight. But I don't think this is right for Gainesville right now. But and thank you for coming and making your argument. I think that says a lot of you guys.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we normally don't allow the continued back and forth, but you all came a long way. We know it's very important to you. So if you have any concluding comments, I'll allow it.
I do. I mean, it does state in the ordinance that I read it on the agenda, as well as impose regulations prohibiting the use of nicotine dispensing devices in any location where smoking is prohibited by state law. And again, that is the key for us, because you're equating it directly as a tobacco product, and you're saying that it is the same as smoking. And clearly, by the evidence that we provided for you, the scientific studies, it is not the same as smoking. So that's our biggest concern. And again, what is 4 weeks? If you can just vote no tonight or table it for tonight and give us 4 weeks, we'll put together the best presentation you've ever seen about electronic cigarettes, bring in industry experts, and tell them how it's beneficial for your community. So that's just 4 weeks is all I'm asking, please. That's it.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and we have closed the public discussion. I don't see any other lights from commissioners, and I don't hear any motion to table this item, so we will go ahead and proceed to a vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Oh, it's a roll call vote. My apologies. Mr. Clerk?
Commissioner Poe? Aye. Commissioner Wells?
Aye.
Commissioner Carter? Aye. Commissioner Chase? Aye. Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Mayor Brady?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. So, again, thank you for your participation. We know you're disappointed. We do encourage you on other matters we may take up related to this to get engaged early and often. Okay?